Hello, my name is Emma, and in today's lesson, I am going to teach you pronunciation of years. So what do I mean by years? Well, I'm going to talk about different years and how we pronounce them. So in English, we pronounce years differently depending on what year it is. So I'm going to teach you a little bit about this. And to begin with, I'm going to give you an example. I have here the year. Is it 2021 or is it 2021? How do we pronounce this? Well, you can actually pronounce this both ways, but most people pronounce it this way. Most of the time we actually say 2021. So we break this up, and I'm going to explain other years that follow this in a moment, but I just want to show you some differences. Now let's look at the next year. Okay, here we have a year. Do we pronounce this as 2005 or do we pronounce this as 2005 or 2005? Well, the way we actually pronounce this year is 2005. So you might be thinking, wait a second, I don't understand. Why is it okay to say 2021, but why don't we say 25 or something like that? Well, I'm not the one who created the English language, so I apologize. But in today's video, I'm going to try to make this as simple as possible for you. You're going to learn about how to talk about different decades. You're going to learn about the rules that are similar to this, the rules that are similar to this, and when do we use which pronunciation. Okay, so let's get started. Okay, so I know the pronunciation of years can be confusing. Let's start with the easiest ways to pronounce certain years. Okay, so the rule I'm going to teach you is the rule we use when we pronounce years, and this rule happens most of the time. So I have here 2010. How do we pronounce this word? We can say 2010. This year is 2010. We can also say 2010, but in general, native speakers of English prefer to say 2010. And this is a lot easier. It's a lot faster to say, so it's the more common way to say it. It's the same with this year. What can we say? We can say 2011. This year is 2012. Can you guess what this one's going to be? 2013, 2014, 2015, 2016. Let's just go to the very end of the decade. 2017, 2018, 2019, and then 2020. We can keep going. 2021, 2022, 2023. I think you understand the picture. So that's what's happening after 2010. So anytime after 2010, remember, it's easy. Now let's look at the 90s. Okay, what do we say with this one? Well, we follow the same rule, actually. We say 1990. What do you think this one is? 1991. 1992. Okay, some of you might have been born in these years, so they're really good ones to know. Or maybe for some of you who are older, maybe you went to college during these years, or you remember these years really well. 1993. What comes after 1993? Can you guess? If you said 1994, you're correct. So this goes all the way up to 1999. Okay, so we have 1999. 2000 is a different story, so we'll get to that a little bit later. But all of these are pronounced in two parts. We have the first number, which is the 19, and the second number, in this case 90, 91, 92, and so forth. What about if you were born in the 80s? How do you pronounce numbers from this decade? Well, it's the same rule. We can actually say 1980. This is 1981, 1982, and so forth. So again, you have two parts. You have the 19, and then you have the other part of the year, 80, 81, 82, 83, and so forth. Can you say 1980? No. So native speakers do not say that. Technically, you are correct, but nobody uses that. Okay, so when you say these years, we do not say 19,081. That's incorrect. We say simply 1980, 1981. The same goes for the 1970s. So you can say 1970, 1971, and so forth. And it just keeps happening that way in all the previous decades. So here I have another example. Here I have more than 100 years ago, a lot more. I have here 1870. Does that follow the same rule as these? Yeah, it does. So what do we say? We look at the first part. This is 18. And then we have another number, 70. 1870. What do you think this one's going to be? 1871. I'm going to put another year on here. I picked this one. What do you think this number is? 1867. So this is an important year for Canada because this is when Canada became a country. Okay, so these all follow the same rules. Now we are going to learn the exceptions to these rules. As you know, English always has exceptions, so that's what is next. Okay, so now we're going to look at some of the years that have a harder pronunciation. And that is anything that has two O's in it, meaning 2000, 2001, 2002. Why did I draw this face? Well, because this is so much harder to say than 2020. Instead, we have to say the word thousand, which is a bit of a mouthful. We also need the word and one. So 2001, 2002, 2003. Can you guess what this one's going to be? 2004, 2005, 2006, 2007, 2008, 2009. See, I feel this way when I say all these numbers because I'm getting tired saying so many words at once. I love saying 2010. It's just so fast. So that reminds me, how do we say this one? Does it follow this rule? No, we say 2010. So this is when I become happy again. Hopefully that can help you remember. If you can't remember numbers, just think if you can put an unhappy face in it, then you got to say it the long way. 2000 and whatever. Okay, so now we're going to look at a couple more exceptions. Luckily, we are now in the 2020s. So when you talk about this year or the following year, you get to say it in the easy way. So now let's look at some exceptions and let's learn about how we talk about decades. Okay, so we've covered a lot already. Now we're going to talk more about numbers and history. So these are all older numbers. So if you don't care about history, this might be less important to you. What we've covered already is probably the most important because those are the years that have happened recently. So I have here some numbers. I have 1900, 1800, 1700, and 1600. when we're talking about the beginning of a century, we have a certain way of pronouncing it. We say 1900, 1800, 1700, 1600. So we have the number, which is in this case a teen, and then we have 100, so 1900. So this is an exception for when we're talking about the beginning of a century. So when we have two O's, this is how we pronounce that. When we're talking about the early 1900s, we have a certain way of pronouncing that as well. So we have here 1901. The pronunciation of this is 1901. You might think, why do we say O? This is a 0. It's not the letter O, but we actually pronounce this like an O, like the letter O. 1901. Can you guess what this one is? 1902. 1903. And it continues. We have 1904, 1905, 1906. And then we get to this number. Can you guess what this one is? It's like 2010. We say 1910. And after that, it's nice and easy. We have 1911, 1912, and it follows those rules I mentioned earlier, where we have this part of the number, and then we say this part of the number. So now let's get to the exciting part, talking about decades. So we often talk about different time periods. We often talk about what it was like to live in the 1990s. How do we call this period 1990 to 1999? What do we call that as a whole? We call that decade the 90s. So you can say the 90s and it means this period. Some of you might have been born in the 90s. Some of you might have really enjoyed the 90s. Some of you might remember before the internet in the 90s, or when the internet was new, what it was like. So that time period is called the 90s. Before that, we have 1980 to 1989. What do we call this decade? Well, this time period is the 80s. Many people like 80s music. Before that, we have the 70s, which is this time period, 1970 to 1979. We have the 60s. We have the 50s, the 40s, the 30s, the 20s, and so forth. Okay, so we have covered a lot today. What I want you to do is really focus on the years that matter to your life. So, for example, you might really focus on the year you were born, because you're likely to say that year a lot. Or maybe years that are happening now or just happened, like 2020, 2021, 2010. Those might be more important years to remember. If you're not interested in history, these words might not be as important. They're still important, but I would focus my time on the years that are the most meaningful and important to your own life, because those are the years you're likely to say. Now, you might notice that we have the 90s, the 80s, the 70s, and so forth. What do you call the decade of the 2000s? The truth is, there is no consensus. Different people call it different things. So when we talk about the decade, and we're talking about this, some people might say the 2000s. There might be other ways to call it, but again, there's no real consensus. It's the same when we're talking about this decade. So 2010 to 2019. What do we call this decade? Some people might call it the 2010s or the 20-teens. Again, there's no real consensus, so you might hear different things. So thank you so much for watching. I highly recommend you come visit our website at www.engvid.com, and there you can actually take a quiz to practice everything you learned here. I also recommend that you subscribe to my channel on YouTube for more videos on pronunciation, grammar, vocabulary, study skills, and so much more. Thanks for watching, and until next time, take care.